lot of purring and also a lot of like, I'm about to leap and run away. I was going to put on a tie, but I put on a cat instead. Are we recording? Let's start this thing. Hey, I'm Trace Savage. This is Tristan Loveless. We're at NonDoc Media headquarters, and we have a visitor today, Sprout the Paseo cat. He's here. Probably not going to help us talk about jurisdictional issues in eastern Oklahoma, but if he has something to say, he can chime in. So, looking forward to the conversation. Hello and welcome to a NonDoc 10-minute talk. I'm Trace Savage, Editor-in-Chief. You saw me a minute ago with a good friend, Sprout the Paseo cat. I'm back with Tristan Loveless, our Tulsa-based courts reporter. He drove down the turnpike this morning to talk about issues in eastern Oklahoma. Tristan, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit about your background, how you came to NonDoc, and what you really cover for us.
Okay. So I'm Tristan. I'm from Tulsa and Skytook. My background is before I was here doing journalism was I worked in education. I helped teach debate. And then I did law school. So I went to the University of Tulsa, graduated in 2023. And shortly afterwards met you and started working here.
Yeah, we posted a job. We got some support to post a courts-focused journalism job in the Tulsa area, really because of a lot of the fascinating legal questions, jurisdictional questions, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. And we posted that job, and you applied, and we had some younger journalism graduate applicants, and we had you who had a Juris Doctorate. But not formal journalism training. You do a lot of Wikipedia editing. I don't know that we're maybe supposed to talk about that publicly, right?
Yeah.
But my thought was, well, I can certainly help someone learn how to do journalism properly. I can't teach someone how to understand law, and in particular Indian law. And so that's something I think you focused on during your education. You're a Cherokee citizen, and really one of the things we want to talk about is what's going on now in 2025 as this year starts. More than 4 years past a landmark Supreme Court decision in McGirt v. Oklahoma.
Gosh, we're at 5 years now, aren't we? At 2025?
Getting to 5, we will be 4.5 years. So in summer of 2020, the U.S. Supreme Court held that the Muskogee Creek Reservation had never been disbanded by Congress. And what that meant was that functionally, when the Court of Criminal Appeals in Oklahoma expanded that or applied that ruling to other cases for the Chickasaw, Cherokee, Choctaw, Seminole reservations, Quapaw, some other tribes subsequently as well, it means that functionally most of eastern Oklahoma is an Indian country reservation. And Indian country is sort of a legal term of art. 18 U.S.C. 1151A, and that basically says for criminal purposes, for purposes of the Major Crimes Act, only the federal government and the tribe have criminal jurisdiction over crimes at the time of the McGirt decision, either crimes committed by or committed against tribal citizens. And subsequently, the state of Oklahoma pursued a different case, Oklahoma v. Castro Huerta, that was a landmark case in its own right that said that the state has concurrent jurisdiction when it comes to cases where the perpetrator is a non-indigenous individual, but the victim is indigenous. Mm-hmm. And it's very complicated, very important, and we're going to try to break this down here in the next 8 minutes. So give us an overview of your thoughts on like why this is so interesting to people and why people who are not tribal citizens maybe should matter or should care.
I think what makes it kind of most interesting, at least to me, is a lot of people kind of have the like misconceptions about what it means to be, like a tribal citizen. What does it mean to be Native? Like one of the things I talk about a lot when we write about this Indian law stuff is that being Native is considered like a political classification legally. So, being Cherokee is you're a Cherokee citizen. That's a political designation.
Not a race-based designation.
Yeah, and you see a lot of people talk about it being like a race-based specification. And there's some like tension there that definitely, because how we get tribal citizenship is from these like rolls that were created that have like Indian blood on it. So there's some like tension there too.
Which are not like appreciated, right, in a historical context by tribal citizens.
Yeah.
And part of being a sovereign tribal nation is self-determination of membership, right?
Yeah,
and so,
sitting your own membership. Some tribes in Oklahoma are going to have blood quantums that require a certain blood quantum, which is like a fraction of Indian blood that the federal government tracks. In other tribes, I'm Cherokee, they don't require a specific blood quantum. If you're a descendant of someone on the Cherokee rolls, you can be a Cherokee Nation citizen.
And as a result, the Cherokee Nation is the largest tribe headquartered here in Oklahoma.
Yes,
and
definitely the largest in Oklahoma. Us and the Navajo compete for largest in the nation. It changes every couple months.
Yeah. So, following the McGirt decision, one of the things that is still majorly up in the air is whether the Indian country reservation status for these tribes applies for civil law purposes. And when we talk about civil law, we're talking about things like taxation. We're talking about business regulation or municipal regulation. And I often refer to Schrodinger's reservation theory, where can a reservation simultaneously exist and not exist, right? And that's sort of the question. And there's a case called Strobel v. Oklahoma Tax Commission, which is going upon a year now after oral arguments in front of the Oklahoma Supreme Court, right about this week, right? And
it's one of my first stories when I started a year ago.
Yeah, and so we're not going to talk about civil jurisdiction because those questions are still unfolding. And one of the reasons we wanted to hire your position and are so blessed to have your expertise covering this is that early on, following the McGirt decision, there was a conversation with a Indian law professor from the West Coast who was talking to a group of journalists, and he was thrilled. And he said, this is so exciting. You're going to be covering this for 30 years. And I was like, yeah, that's what you're looking for, is a 30-year story as a journalist. And the reason is because it has a lot of implications. Unusual. We try not to use the word unique in Oklahoma, but essentially unique to Eastern Oklahoma right now. And a lot of the eyes of indigenous communities around the country are on Oklahoma as a result, because all these court cases are popping up. So let's talk briefly about the most recent major court case, which was the O'Brien decision that the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals unanimously found that for municipalities, or functionally the state.
Was that unanimous, or was there one?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Judge Lewis was dissented. Judge Lewis dissented, so it was a 4-1 case. A good catch. This is why we've hired him. And basically that case in Oklahoma, the Court of Crims is the highest criminal court, or the highest criminal court in the state, and they found that municipalities have concurrent jurisdiction over non-member Indians within a reservation that they are not a member of that tribe. Yeah. And so O'Brien is a mixed martial arts fighter, Nick Nasty O'Brien, and he plug his career there, and he was arrested on a DUI charge, open container charge.
Mm-hmm. And Muskogee Nation, he's an Osage citizen,
right? And so the court found that they applied for the first time what's called the Bracker balancing test, mm-hmm. Which tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, so Bracker balancing test. I guess one of the first things to kind of start with is this will be one of the first time that test has been used in like the criminal context. So that's a test created by the U.S. Supreme Court. Typically, it's used to ask and analyze the question of whether or not states exercising civil jurisdiction over like natives or tribal citizens would infringe on tribal sovereignty. The Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals here is kind of doing charting like some new territory there with the using that in the criminal context.
And the idea is you balance the interests of all the parties involved: the federal government, the tribal nation, the state, the city. That sort of question. And the question, and what the Court of Crims found, and not to, what the 4-1 majority said is that a tribe's interests were not infringed by the city of Tulsa enforcing this DUI matter or other traffic ticket matters on an Osage citizen driving through the Muskogee Nation. Now, some of those judges on that court they hinted that they believed it should be applied to anybody. That even if you as a Cherokee citizen were on within the Cherokee reservation boundaries, that some of those judges said that they also believe the state should have concurrent jurisdiction over you. That's not what the O'Brien court case held.
Yeah, I think it's helpful when we're talking about cases like O'Brien that there's always going to be like a narrow way to read it and a broad way to read it. The narrow way is, this is just Tulsa. This is jurisdiction over the non-member Indians only within the city of Tulsa. Kind of more broad, as we'll kind of get to in a few more minutes, is this could stand for just like there is concurrent jurisdiction for the state over non-member tribal citizens in Indian country. That's kind of the broadest reading of O'Brien that I think we're going to see some people advocating in the coming months.
So in the weeks that followed the O'Brien decision, the U.S. Department of Justice filed lawsuits and seeking injunctions against Rogers County, Mays County District Attorney Matt Ballard and Okmulgee County and McIntosh County District Attorney Carol Iskey. Those are Oklahoma prosecutors, and they basically asked for injunction to stop those prosecutors from filing cases against tribal citizens where they said the McGirt ruling is clear that the state does not have that jurisdiction. There's been a bunch of other cases, the Dio case, the Bull case that you've really covered, which we'll try to drop into the comments because it's really fascinating and complicated stuff.
Yeah. Bull was one of the cases they sued over.
Yeah, Bull was one of the cases where they sued over, where a guy it was a child pornography case, and he was is essentially wound up charged in state court, federal court, and tribal court, all for the same crime, which is, you typically think that's not legal, but in this instance it was.
In law school, when they tell you that can happen, they tell you it doesn't.
and yet it did, right? And so here we are. That's why we're covering this for 30 years. So your thoughts on the DOJ suing the two district attorneys, real quick? Not every day. Yeah. I think it happened 2 days before Christmas, so I was just like grumpy in a bathrobe, just like pounding out details on this lawsuit.
I was on vacation reading that in the airports.
There has not, as last I checked, there had not been the granting of the preliminary injunction, which sort of maybe indicates that the court is not thrilled by that argument from the DOJ. I don't know. What is your take?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what to take away from the fact we haven't seen a preliminary injunction yet, just because, holidays, there's a lot of time out in the courts. We should be seeing some sort of order soon to kind of see whether or not they're going to accept that or not.
One other thing real quick, we are blowing past our 10-minute talk deadline, but we do that every time. So we need to maybe turn it into a 15-minute talk. But, this has mostly played out or largely played out in the city of Tulsa, which just had a mayoral election. State Representative Monroe Nichols was elected mayor, and he has taken a bit of a different tact with regard to whether the city of Tulsa has traffic ticket jurisdiction, municipal jurisdiction over tribal citizens. And that has been a fight with the Muskogee Nation in federal court. Obviously, the O'Brien case, even Governor Kevin Stitt's brother, Keith Stitt, his traffic case is tied up in all that. And the new mayoral administration, Mayor Nichols campaigned on trying to find a more working relationship. So talk about what we've seen in the first few weeks of his administration.
In that Muskogee Nation lawsuit against the city of Tulsa, both parties have filed to do some settlement negotiations. So they've kind of delayed doing any arguments or additional filings in that case so that the city can negotiate with the Muskogee Nation and see if they can dismiss that lawsuit. And then when it comes to like responding to O'Brien, I know Mayor Nichols gave an interview, I think it was last week, where he was talking about how his administration is responding to O'Brien by trying to like forward these criminal cases that involve tribal citizens to tribal courts. So even though O'Brien held the city does have this concurrent jurisdiction, Mayor Nichols seems to be taking the stance that those cases should be, still sent to tribal courts.
District Attorney Steve Kunzweiler for Tulsa County, however, he doesn't believe that these cases are being prosecuted well enough or frequently enough by tribal courts, and he's asking that the cases still be forwarded to him. So 2 steps forward, 1 step sideways all the time in this sort of situation.
That's really interesting. In the district attorney coming in and saying, because of O'Brien, I want to prosecute these cases, because I think this also kind of going back to that broad narrow, right? The narrow reading is this applied to municipal courts and is a municipal ruling. District Attorney Kunzweiler is kind of taking this broader view that if the city has this concurrent jurisdiction, then the state by implication does, because cities are part of the state. It's a lesser entity. So yeah, we're kind of. I don't think that's settled. I think there's going to be some more court arguments about what is the extent of O'Brien. Does it stop at the city, or does it go to the county district attorney?
And like most matters that are complicated and political, an underlying motivation of all this is money too, right? The city of Tulsa,
yes,
funds a lot of its services, as most municipalities do in Oklahoma, for at least its court system, by having people, pay fines and tickets and things of that nature. And if those tribal citizens are instead paying those tickets to tribal courts, the city is concerned about the financial implications of that. So, we've talked a lot about this. We could talk another 30 years on it. But in the meantime, I would just encourage people to follow Tristan. If you're on Twitter or X, it's Loveless OK is your handle there. Sign up for our newsletters, nondoc.com/newsletter. Follow his work, because it's critically important. And having an attorney on staff to do journalism is very illuminative in terms of understanding the law behind these cases, the law behind the headlines. And maybe that's a good headline for this talk. Tristan, thank you so much for this conversation. NonDoc.com, if you're a donor, you can have a coffee mug. Best day at work ever.
That's kind of a mean thing to say to a cat.
Good news is I don't think it knows English.
I think it does.
I'm getting some purring. I'm getting some major purr
action.
I can feel it on my leg. Hey, buddy. We should just leave the mic on the cat and let it go.